Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. This is a pre-recorded show as I shall be away doing some more footage and filming for the upcoming documentary series, Megalithic Odyssey. So this is a pre-recorded show tonight. Before I get into the body of tonight's show, I would like you to go to the website megalithicodyssey.com. And you will find some fill-in fields to sign up for the newsletter and updates on the documentary series. If you do that, the production team are giving away hundreds and hundreds of free viewings of the pilot episode just by signing up for that. So it's well worth your time doing it. You'll get updates on the actual documentary and info on the content and so on, but you'll also have a chance to see the pilot movie for free. And I've seen some of the production footage and it's absolutely spectacular. It's BBC Discovery Channel level without the constraints. All kinds of top topics and speculation is brought up that wouldn't be allowed in a mainstream academic documentary, but it's not fluff and woo-woo. We all know what we're talking about. We've all studied this subject for long enough, and we're not, it's not being done to get ratings or to fill a need. This will be opening new doors on the megalithic structures of Europe and beyond, and I think it'll be a truly refreshing and groundbreaking paradigm shifting experience. So go to megalithicodyssey.com and sign up there and be able to chance to see the pilot episode for free. It's beautiful. I've seen some of the opening scenes and the aerial footage flying over places like Callanish and other famous sites, and it's just stunning. So megalithicodyssey.com. Now tonight I want to talk about a few things. It's sort of like going to be an open mic show tonight. And one of the first things I want to talk about is the recent false flags that we've had here in Ireland. Now, I do believe that I know false flags happen all the time. In fact, it's an integral part of democratic governments in maintaining their power structures. They implement false flags all the time, not just ones relating to terrorism and so forth and military, but there's also economic false flags. When you think about it, like something like an annual government budget, where it's not so much a big deal these days, but in the old days when they used to read out how much extra a pint of milk was to cost and so on, that was all nonsense. That was all a false flag to make you believe that you are totally dependent upon government altruism in order to survive as a human being and how good they are for you. Those budgets mean nothing. They're all complete nonsense. Now, in Ireland in recent weeks, well, let me tell you what happened. A few weeks ago, quite very close to where I grew up in Ballymun, the north side of Dublin, there was a hotel there called the Regency Hotel. I used to be a pirate DJ when I was very young in the hotel on the roof playing records. And anyway, the hotel is still there, and it was a great heavy metal venue back in the early 80s too. But there was a weigh-in for a boxing event. I'm not going to go into the details. You can look this up. During the weigh-in for the boxing event, a member of a crime family in Dublin was shot dead in a professional-style hit in the back of the auditorium where the weigh-in for the boxing event was taking place. Almost instantaneously, it made the BBC main evening news over in the UK. Now, every week there are plenty of gangland shootings in the UK, and it was very, very strange that they would actually go so quick. It was a Building 7 type scenario, that they would actually go as far as putting it on the main BBC news, a relatively mundane shooting in a nowhere part of Dublin, for no reason. And that really set my alarm bells off, because to me, that was the first thing that made me think there's something smelly going on here. Secondly, was the high-profile nature of it in terms of the actual assassination and hit itself. Usually these things are not done in places where there's plenty of cameras, and there was cameras all over this event that were there for the boxing weigh-in event. There's CCTV cameras all over the hotel. There was press and media everywhere, and these guys decided to shoot this guy in front of all this stuff. This is not how gangland hits happen. Then they exit the building, and as people take selfies of them, photographs of them, everything. What was also interesting was that the weapons they were using Uzis and AK-47s. These are not gangland type weapons in Ireland. Most gang members in Ireland use 9mm pistols. This was almost a paramilitary operation, and then almost instantaneously, within a few hours, there's already stories that the continuity IRA, the breakaway IRA group that decided to keep the war ongoing after the Good Friday Agreement, were claiming responsibility for this attack. Almost instantaneously, next to that, we had Enda Kenny, who is the current Prime Minister of Ireland, what we call a Taoiseach here, demanding a statement by Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams on what happened. Now, that was enough for me to know that this was some dirty political false flag games going on here. I don't believe for a minute that was the continuity IRA that were involved in that. I don't even believe the continuity IRA probably even exists beyond a kind of an intelligence operation created by Irish and British military for whatever reason. But that made no sense. Now, and I will also explain the kind of weapons they were using. It was too professional. It was much too professional. That's not to say that these people aren't professionally trained. We know the IRA were extremely well trained, and to the point where they were knocking British helicopters out of the sky no problem, British military helicopters out of the sky no problem, and intercepting basically British military transmissions, right down to like getting actual jams and interruptions and feeds on different military groups within the British forces, talking to one another and tape recording them. They knew everything. They would never go after gangland members in this style. They wouldn't, not that publicly, unless they were. You see this kind of thing with Islamic type terrorists in Paris. They want to get killed so they can achieve martyrdom, and it looks impressive. This is more of a religious fanatic kind of thing, the kind of thing the IRA don't do. They don't do suicide bombers, or they're an army. When the IRA existed. So anyway, Gerry Adams laughed the thing off and saying the IRA don't exist anymore, and I don't speak for the continuity of the IRA at all. What I think is happening with this, and then there was kind of a lockdown around Dublin. There was a couple of more what they call revenge shootings, a few more this, that, and the other, a few more corpses turning up, high-profile security, special forces, and highly armed police on the streets. The usual story, SWAT teams. And what I think is going on here is that I think that those criminals were shot by members were ordered by someone inside the Irish establishment to do it. The reason for this is, well, firstly, they think no one will care if a bunch of gangsters are killed, so it's not like they killed an innocent person. The guy they killed is probably a murderer himself anyway, maybe, I don't know. But that'll be the perception among the public in Ireland. So they don't care. The streets are being cleaned up. Secondly, it generates a notion of fear, that we need more security, etc., etc. We know the story. We've all seen this game played out all over the world from 9/11 on. And finally, what I believe is the main reason is that we have a general election coming up here in Ireland, and it's looking highly likely that Sinn Féin will probably win a sizable amount of the vote. Not enough seats maybe to form a government, but they may be able to form a coalition government in the south of Ireland for the first time since in 100 years maybe, form a coalition government with some of the independents and the left-wing socialist parties, and actually be the controlling force in government in Ireland. Why does this frighten the Irish establishment so much? Well, people like Gerry Adams and many other people at the very top of Sinn Féin go right back to the days of the so-called Troubles in Northern Ireland. And they're very well aware of the dirty tricks and other false flags, shall we say, that were played by the Irish government, Irish senior civil servants, and Irish security forces during those years. And there are scores to be settled. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to kill him or anything like that, but they might do something like open a tribunal and have a high profile public hearing on who was involved with what, just to settle those scores. Remember, many of the senior bureaucrats in Ireland were probably part and parcel of events that were deliberately designed to take down the IRA, Sinn Féin, and other groups. We don't know if they leaked information on the whereabouts of IRA guys and so on to the security forces on either side of the border, which led to them being killed. But this is a major score to be settled. And if I was one of these people in senior government right now in Ireland, remember the Good Friday Agreement wasn't even 20 years ago. There's still very much these career civil servants and diplomats at the top. I would be very, very worried if former IRA guys that you may have who are now politicians get into government and start opening the history books. Not only that, they would be only too delighted to be an enormous thorn in the side of any of these politicians, bureaucrats and so forth, who took part in the IMF banking bailout and that other catastrophe that inflicted the country in 2008, and maybe either things like the funny going on around, shall we say, various utility contracts that were handed out to incredibly wealthy people here in the time since. Maybe even the Lisbon II vote. Was it fixed? I don't know. I'm not a supporter of Sinn Féin. I don't care about politics. And I know if Sinn Féin did this, opened up the books and exposed these people, if they did this, it would not be done out of the goodness of Sinn Féin's heart. It would just be purely a political agenda on their behalf. But having said that, I think many of us in Ireland wouldn't complain either if indeed Sinn Féin got into government in Ireland and did indeed, shall we say, dust off the books, start finding audio transcripts, computer records to show that at the very highest level, the Irish establishment were involved in very, very dark things. It would actually be a good thing in a funny kind of my enemy's enemy is my friend kind of way. And I think that's what happened with these recent shootings in Dublin. I don't think they were the work of organised gangs hiring the continuity IRA. I think whoever who did those assassinations were somebody who were hired for that specific purpose, and we'll never know who they are probably, but it just shows how frightened the current Irish political and business establishment are to the point where they set up a false flag like this. And this brings up another issue. I've seen people over the internet say things to me like that Thomas Sheridan doesn't believe that false flags exist. No, false flags absolutely do exist. Absolutely, I've always known that. The issue I have with these truthers is their notion that somehow the victims aren't real, that they're all people who are involved in crisis acting, and they're professional actors who have flown around the world, specifically that girl with the telephone who looks nothing like the same person in those four photographs that keeps branded about, who are flown around the world to prove that no one actually died. Now, I don't know why they think that governments who would actually create a false flag terrorist event that would justify starting wars all around the world and leading to the deaths of maybe millions would think twice about having people murdered on their own soil. Firstly, that's moronic. These people, it's just business. They'd have no... In fact, the more dead bodies, if there was a false flag, the more dead bodies, the better it is for the government, because it creates more fear in the populace. It creates more funerals that the media can cover. It creates more platitudes of songwriters and celebrities can sing about. And I want this. This idea of these crisis actors at these events is completely moronic. It's moronic. So stop it. People were murdered in Paris. People were murdered at all these events like the Boston. I don't know what happened. I don't know for sure what happened at Boston, Paris, or anywhere. But I'm telling you, those people were murdered. And I wonder if there are agents working within the truth movement who know this and deliberately make it as stupid as retarded looking as possible, like French policemen. Like the one on the attack on Charlie Hebdo in Paris was a classic example of how completely stupid many of these truthers are. People on top of the building wearing their winter sports coats and jackets, zip-up jackets, they weren't trying to keep warm. They were wearing flak jackets. Stupid. A policeman who's been shot, who's texting for backup, is taking selfies. No, he's been shot, and he might even, or a woman who has half her leg removed in Boston is texting a date, Netflix and chill. As I saw this disgusting meme with her boyfriend while half her leg is gone. No, the woman thinks she's dying, and she's saying goodbye to her family. This is what happens. She's not a crisis actor. She's a victim of an attack. So stop with this crisis actor bullshit. Not only is it retarded and immature, but that you have no right to talk about psychopaths this and psychopaths that if you have no compassion for the real victims of these attacks. They are real. They are dead. They are horrifically maimed. They are corpses. They're not crisis actors who've been hired from central casting. Stop it. And that's what happened in Dublin this week. The same thing. It's real. When we're dealing with people whose backs are up against the wall, it's real. When we're talking about governments and powerful people and psychopaths in position of power maintaining their power base, it's real. Now, talking about psychopaths, this is the last month that you will be able to buy the book version of Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, my book. The publishing contract is up on March 1st, and I'm not going to republish the book. If I do, I'd probably take excerpts from some of it and put it on web pages, but the book in its entirety will no longer be available. So if you want to get a copy of Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, and I hope you will because it's still a great book. A lot of people still tell me it's still important and vital. And it was an important part of my life, but it's a part of my life I'm going to put behind me. I want to move on, and as you know, I'm interested in so many things. And that stage is over. I've done the best that I could to inform the world that we have this psychopathic control grid, and it's reflected all the way from the top of society down to the bottom. And if you can recognize the ones that you work with, or you're in a club with, or you were married to, you can recognize then how the ones at the top function. And that was the purpose of why I wrote Puzzling People and Defeat the Demons. It wasn't so much to get people in a kind of an awareness, shall we say, a word I hate, by the way, an awareness of this infection in their own lives, but also use it to create and build a consciousness firewall in this crazy world run by the psychopaths. So it would also, I'd also appreciate it as well. I don't get rich from book sales, believe me, unless you're J.K. Rowling or you've sold some kind of rights to Hollywood. Otherwise, you make a pathetic living from writing. But still, every little penny helps. And so if you want to help me out and say thank you, I would love it if you could go to the Book Depository or Awesome Books. Don't go to Amazon. Amazon will just be collecting your name for a CIA database. Better still, go to your local neighborhood bookshop and ask them to order it for you. Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, because after March 1st, the book won't be available and it'll only be very expensive copies available on the usual sites. So get it now while it's still affordable. And just to say I was part of a shift, because when I came on the scene, nobody was talking about psychopaths behind all these events all over the world and why the world makes no sense. Now, because of my work more than anyone else in this scene, I don't care what anyone says, You're using terms like gaslighting, projection, crazy making, word salad, and so on, instead of talking about alien reptilian shapeshifters. And that was my gift to the alternative scene, was to stop all that nonsense and put it into clear language that could be validated using their science against them. It's an important aspect of it. So go to, if you want to help me out and you want to get the book before its history, it'll be a collector's piece soon. Go to Book Depository or Awesome Books, or order it from your local neighborhood bookstore. And don't go to Amazon because it's just a CIA database gathering network. And get Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath by Thomas Sheridan. And if those of you have already bought it over the last 5 years, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it for helping me get a profile out there, and allowing me the opportunity to explore other topics and other writing and make films and all this kind of other thing. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have been able to make a film like Blind Spot about the possible pusher serial killer in Manchester that might even save lives. And as it's allowed, you see, it's allowed all of us. It's not just me. I'm just the one, carrying the can, shall we say. But it's allowed all of us to up the bar against the psychopathic control grid. And we're always one step ahead of them. But not only that, it's allowed us to actually possibly save lives. You look at, in Manchester, we may have, the body count it seems to be still ongoing, but at the same time too, maybe there's people who've been saved who don't walk home by the canals late at night because they've seen Blind Spot. Things like that. And you're part of that as well, so be proud of that. Rather than, I'm all about, what can we do? I don't believe in a big grand solution. They don't exist. The common clusters are not coming. The aliens are not coming. Jesus is not coming back. None of these things. There's not going to be a great awakening. You're wasting your time trying to convert people who are asleep. It's not going to work at all. The best thing to do is to try and find small victories in your life now, small victories in your world now. And believe me, those small victories can make one's life tremendously more satisfying than when you're at the mercy of the BBC or Fox or RTE or Russia Today or Press TV and all the other news services. Because you're no longer a sitting duck. You can actually be a consciousness insurgent, and you can, shall we say, skirt around the margins and win little victories. You see, they want you. They always want you waiting for the big moment. That's why they gave you the 2012. That's why 2012 assholes, people who, all these wankers, all these pieces of shit, all these motherfuckers who played the 2012 card. And what happened? As soon as it didn't happen, they were walking around like nothing happened. They filled you with false hope. It's the Jesus Christ salvation returning lie again. There will be no salvation. There will be no human race getting off its knees. There will be no great awakening. And to hold out for these things is only to create more heartbreak for yourself. The free man thing. The free man thing would work only if everyone was doing it. The problem is, if you do it now, it's a futile sacrifice. But if you can find ways to protect yourself with it, rather than being a fool walking up to policemen and challenging them with like your stupid word spells, it can be helpful to anything, any knowledge. I always tell people, look, when they say to me, Thomas, what can I do to defeat the psychopathic control grid? Their jaws often hit the floor when I say, go to community college and take some night courses in things that can help you save money. And they look at you like, what? Yes, they can. There's two things. If you go to a community college and sign up for a night course in carpentry, auto repair, computer stuff, anything, baking, sewing, knitting, anything, that's one less thing that the psychopaths have over you. If you can fix things, you can repair things, you can build things. You don't have to keep running and spending money all the time. You can do it yourself. Take it into your own hands. And that may not sound all grandiose. That may not sound like I'm standing up against the Illuminati. I'm standing up against them. We're going to fight them, and there's going to be a great big awakening. Human race are going to get off their knees, and the military. It's not going to happen. Grow up. It's not going to happen. They've never had as much power or arrogance as they do now. You're not going to win the big battle. There's never going to be a great settlement. But there can be small victories. And believe me, because you did those small victories yourself, they will affect you in a much more positive and self-empowering manner than if you had waited for someone else to do it for you. Now, I'm not here, Thomas Sheridan is not here, and all the other people you listen to, in order to save you. Only you can save yourself. Only you can do that. And if you can do that in one small little way, it will feel much better than if someone like a politician or Russell Brand or the Occupy movement or all the other bullshit they've given you over the years to do it for you. It feels good because you get brain chemicals when you're part of a crusade or a movement or this, that, and the other. But it's not going to save you. The same thing with trying to wake people up. You're wasting your time. I'm only here for myself, the ones I love, and my soul tribe. Those of you who are already awake, and I don't care if I don't reach another person. I've already reached enough at this point that it's okay. I've done my work. I've gotten there. But there's enough of us have woken up where we don't need anyone else. We have created an enormous movement of alternative thinkers. And I'm not just talking about the alternative scene. I'm talking about like all kinds of people. For the first time in history, there's millions of us not voting and not waiting to be told how a politician or a government or a political manifesto is going to save us. This has never happened. We've already won. But we don't have to be a conquering army who wins the planet. See, that would make us just like them. You see this attitude of, one day we're all going to wake up and we're going to take the psychopaths in charge down. But that's an imperialist mindset. That's a warmongering mindset. We've already won. Think about that. The fact that you're listening to my show now, you've already won, and you're not listening to the BBC. The fact that you're signing up and saying, oh, screw this shit, I'm going to do a night course in auto repair so I can fix my own car or motorcycle. You've already won. You've already won. I'm going to screw this shit, I'm going to start growing my own organic veg. You've already won. I'm not going to watch TV anymore. I'm going to create artworks, paintings. I'm going to get into a gaming club. I'm going to join a social club. I'm going to have fun. You've already won. To actually try and then topple over the establishment, that puts you in the same mindset as them. It's an imperialistic war mindset. It shouldn't be about that. What we should compare ourselves to are the original Norwegian, Irish, and Scottish Vikings who left this part of the world because they didn't like all these self-appointed Christian kings taking over in Scandinavia, and they left. And they went and they founded Iceland. And they created when they arrived in Iceland, no one bar a small Irish community had lived there. But when they landed in Iceland, it was a clean slate. It was uninhabited. They didn't have to kill anybody to take it over. All they had to do was then create a world of magic and wonder, and then fit themselves in this Icelandic saga. Now that's how we should see ourselves. Rather than saying they didn't go to Iceland to build up an army to go back and attack the kings in Norway. They didn't do it for that reason. To them, their idea of victory was creating a new reality on this unspoiled land. Well, in this day and age, that's how we should see ourselves. We are now living in an unspoiled land. Or the ones we've arrived here, we are the soul tribe. We've all got a similar kind of ideas, although it's good that we divert on different things and we disagree on things because we need that to create a sense of dynamic flux in order to bring up new ideas and creation. But generally speaking, we're not at the mercy of the BBC, Fox News, governments anymore. We're off doing our own thing. We have a golden opportunity now to enjoy this. Enjoy it. And rather than saying, we've woken up, now we've got to wake up the world. That's the trap you've been played into. We've woken up, yeah, let's enjoy the rest of our lives. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. You've already won. Think about that. You're not a loser. You're a winner. You have already won. And fair fucks to you. Fair play to you for getting there. You do not need saviors. You do not need crusades. You've done it. You've made it. You're already part of the soul tribe. A soul tribe that has no name, contains people who are everything from atheists to Christians to heathens to Jews to Buddhists, everything in between. So we're not a cult because we've no religious mandate. We've no charter. We've no leader. Most importantly of all, we cannot be infiltrated because we are a soul tribe of millions of individuals. We are untouchable by the psychopathic control grid because they cannot get into every last one of us. They would love, that's why they're trying to herd you into Occupy. That's why they tried to have you all marching behind a piece of shit like Russell Brand, currently training with the US military, by the way, I might add, the Marines, in a joke show promoting American imperialism. Spiritual consciousness. It's driving them mad that they can't organize us. Because you know something? We're wild animals. We're in the Iceland of 1,000 years ago within the electromagnetic spectrum. We have actually jumped out of their system and we're here. And life is an adventure. You've already won. So don't get that. Don't be waiting for that nonsense of some truth guru standing on a stage with his arms spread apart, telling you that if you do this, that, and the other, we'll wake up the masses. Firstly, let me talk about this, right? There are days when I think that there's probably only a few hundred or a few thousand living beings, functioning conscious beings on this planet. And the majority are not like robotic skin jobs. That are just like bit players in our lives. It really does feel like that to me some days. It really does. And maybe that's true, but not in a shall we say, an exclusive or a snobby sense. Maybe we're the lucky ones. Maybe we have won the lotto ticket of consciousness. And those people, the others haven't. And that's no bad thing. That's no bad thing, my friends. That's reward enough alone for people laughing at you when you told them about conspiracy theories. Just think, you're holding the winning ticket of consciousness. They're not. And the psychopathic control grid would love nothing more than you riding in behind some false guru, false movement. Because once they have that, they can have an agenda. Once they have an agenda, they can politicize it. Once they have a politicizer, the psychopaths can take it over, and you're back again. Revolution, revolving right back to where you started. We are not revolutionaries. We are insurgents on a voyage of exploration as nomadic gypsies across the electromagnetic spectrum towards a saga of creativity and independence. And you want to join Russell Brand after me just saying that? And you want to join things like Occupied? Do you really want to be stuck with a bunch of people who haven't awoken yet? Or are you going to join me on the longship and sail into the west? Because that's where I'm going. And I know in your hearts that's where you want to go to. And you know something? Most of you are either on the voyage or you're standing at the side of the dock. And the beauty of it is you can have your regular life as it exists now. You can have your job. You can have your family bullshit. You can still have to go to shit weddings. I hate weddings, by the way. Wedding receptions especially. And all that nonsense. But below the surface, you are on a voyage of discovery that all these people around you are not on, and that you're the captain of your own longship. And may the wind fill your sails and carry you in the right direction. All you have to do is wait for it to happen. And it's happening you. So don't be led back into the Roman system, back into the port by the liars and the people who want. And that's another thing too. Be very careful with the idea of engaging with the system. I'm going to expose the system. You point out if that's let me do that. Okay, I've done that for you. Okay, now run away. Just run away. Okay, I'm the fellow who's got the hole in the fence of the camp, of the prison camp, and you don't have to go cutting your own hole in the fence. Just run through the fucking hole that I cut. Just run. Just keep fucking running. There's the woods. Go into the woods and live free. Build a longship and then sail to the west. I've done that. The hole is there. You don't need to cut your own hole. I've cut it for you. Off you go. I'm glad to help. Easy. Real easy. It's all so easy. Life is complicated in terms of exterior bullshit foisted upon us. But in terms of actually living your life, even in the modern world, it's not that difficult. It's like so little simple things can free you. Like not watching the news to wonder what the government are going to do to save you. Not even thinking of it, not even having a TV. And if you have a TV, watch the old movies and TV shows that you like, and then switch it off on DVD or whatever. I mean, I'm enjoying the new X-Files series. I'm perfectly capable of jumping into the Matrix, but I also know this new X-Files series is not whistleblowing, just like the original one was whistleblowing. I've seen these very silly videos and blog posts about the X-Files is finally blowing in fiction what's the truth. They're not really, and they never really did. Chris Carter just, if you look at the original X-Files series, although most of you woke up after 9/11, some people, like myself, were always awake, and 9/11 was just one event. It wasn't an opening up of an event. It wasn't anything like that. It was one event. But prior to that, when the X-Files started happening, what I was reading, what I was seeing on the screen, the original X-Files TV show was basic mainstream conspiracy at the time. They were just trawling through conspiracy magazines and newsletters, many of them from right-wing nut jobs in the American Bible Belt, like the Posse Comitatus and all this kind of stuff, which all had the stuff about the Illuminati, the New World Order, all that stuff in it. They were going through those kinds of books, and they were reading UFO books, and they were reading magazines like Fortean Times and so on, and generating stories based on it. That's why the best stories in the X-Files always have been the ones that have nothing to do with aliens. Nothing. And I was watching this aware of all the things that were going on. Even back then, Mother Jones used to be a kind of an alternative magazine. Now Mother Jones is an absolute despicable establishment rag. But back then, that would have been considered kind of like woo, Mother Jones. And Utney Reader was another one. But they're all mainstream rags now. They're kind of what we call hipster, dissidents. It's like the Michael Moore kind of distance. We gotta smash the system by voting Democrat. That kind of bullshit, right? But they would go through all these magazines and stuff and watch these videos you could buy. They used to be able to buy VHS kind of conspiracy type videos. Lyndon LaRouche, that kind of thing. And then build stories based on that, coupled with Fortean type things. So like the best ones I remember from the original series was things like Exeter Street. Absolutely loved Exeter Street. The one at and they had the shape shifting guy Coombs. That was amazing. And then you had Fluke Man. It just went on. And as soon as the aliens and the abductions and all that crap came into it, they just were not interesting episodes. They were mundane riots into stupidity, but they also had a political agenda. And this is the important part of this I want you to pay attention to. There is a very subtle but powerful form of black sorcery in an underlying narrative on the X-Files regarding the idea of aliens and government cover-up. They want you to believe that the greatest crime committed by the US government was not Hiroshima, was not Vietnam and Agent Orange, was not the Patriot Act, was not the genocides and murders of the Native American Indians, was not all the imperialism of the US military since World War II. Oh no! The greatest crime of the US government is that they don't tell us about the aliens. You see? That's a spell. That's black magic. That's real black magic. And that's what you're being led down the garden path with. You are being told that the biggest danger that politicians represent is that they're not giving you disclosure. Not the genocide, not the corruption, not assisting corporate crimes. No, none of that. That's not the greatest crime they've committed is they're not telling you about what's inside Area 51, what happened at Roswell, and then you have people believing this nonsense, believing it. You all know my feelings on the alien stuff. I don't believe aliens have ever visited Earth. The whole thing was invented by military in Hollywood for lots of different reasons, like the flat Earth, same kind of thing, to destroy any kind of real critical thinking and to throw it off in the woo-woo spaceland. That's what that's about. And Roswell was just nothing. It was a lot of stuff the Nazis used. It was a wonder weapon. A wonder weapon of the mind, of the consciousness, of the psychology. And that's the black sorcery of the X-Files. The X-Files, as a great TV show, has even the new. I'm really loving the new ones. I didn't like the first of the new series. When it came on, it was all the usual UFO shite, and I said, "Oh my god!" But it was almost like, let's get that crap out of the way so we can actually have some good episodes, enjoyable episodes. You can't fault David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, both superb actors, and it always looks great. It's filmed great, and that's why we love it. But it has to play, because it's an American TV show, like all American TV show, it's answerable to corporations, advertisers, and governments. And so that means you must abide the system. And so that's why they write all this stuff in about governments and disclosure. You have these people like Stephen Greer walking around saying, we're going to get disclosure. Stephen Greer is a witch doctor. Stephen Greer is a pollution. Stephen Greer has you taken your mind off what really matters, like the horrors committed by these government, has you believing in fictional aliens that don't exist. This is monstrous. This is black sorcery. Now, I'm not against him personally. I don't know if he believes in this shit or not. But he's not doing any favors, because he's playing into this idea of like the aliens. The aliens, we must know, the government knows there has been secret meetings between aliens and governments. There's been secret meetings. Now look, if aliens existed, I'd be the first. I would be delighted. I would love that it was known that's true. Growing up, I made huge investigations into it. When at a very young age, I thought aliens are real because I'd read all those books. By the time I was in my early 20s, I realized that aliens didn't exist. However, the things that I believed in then, that there are what John Keel called ultraterrestrials, that are other forms of consciousness, whatever you want to call them, demons, fairies, the jinn, whatever, that exist on this planet with us. That I more believe now more than ever. I think it's much more, that to me is much more interesting. It's the usual thing again. They always have us looking at space. 90% of the Earth, I think 95% of the Earth's oceans are unexplored. We don't know what's down there, but we know a whole lot about the outer space. Yet they have not looked inside. The same thing that's going on with the paranormal. The same thing has happened with the paranormal. Rather than having you look at the really interesting stuff, uh, the ultraterrestrials, the other forms of consciousness on this planet, they have you wondering about space dudes coming to visit us, and the same old stereotypes being put out there over and over again. We're not ready for contact yet. Oh, that's a great one, isn't it? That's a great excuse. What? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What, when the Vikings went to North America, they hid from the Indians because the Indians weren't ready yet? Same idea. It's ridiculous. Or, they encounter governments. They don't tell us. That's ridiculous. Or they come all this way to hide. Nonsense. The same thing with the oceans. We're sending probes into deep space now. They passed Pluto, and we still don't know it's a 90%, 95% of the oceans. However, there's an interesting parallel there, because the results are achieved for real, and better, should I say, and more plausible with the ultra-terrestrials rather than the extraterrestrials. You saw the program I did here a few weeks ago on how to catch a demon. I don't know what that was. I'm inclined to believe that if it is anything, it was some kind of nature spirit that I trapped in that jar, and that's why I released it. I didn't bury it in the end. I felt kind of guilty about it. I released it and burned the sigil. But that's an actual result. That would be like Stephen Greer or one of these UFO guys actually presenting you with a live alien. And here's me, and that's what you would want, and you'd pay a fortune for that. And here's me saying to you, that's not true. I can give you the real thing as an ultra-terrestrial, and here's the proof. And almost nobody will ever watch my videos. The same thing with the oceans. While we're out looking in outer space at the SETI project and all this other stuff, searching the universe for signs of life, we have not too long ago these strange sounds recorded in deep inside underneath the Pacific Ocean, in the precise location where Kultu from the Lovecraft mythos is said to be located. Are we actually generating a tulpa of Cthulhu under the ocean, maybe from the DNA of a giant squid or something, to bring it to life somehow? That to me is far more interesting as a topic of study than sending SETI signals into space all the time, hoping for a phone call for ET to phone home or phone back. We get real results. Just like the gin jar, we got real results. But the black sorcery of the alien stuff, of the UFO stuff, on shows like the X-Files is put out there for that reason, to stop you looking at the real picture. We're always being given distractions. Look over here so you don't know the real shit over there. And this also this is why they tell you not to mess with demons and stuff like that. Well, people who have drug problems, people who smoke weed, alcoholics, or people who have paranoid delusions shouldn't be allowed near that stuff. But otherwise, healthy, sane people who take the proper precautions, there's nothing wrong with that. They don't want you finding out that it's fucking true. That you can actually get answers back. So they have you believing, oh, it's ghosts, it's I call it the grey lady syndrome. Everything is a ghost. Not that it could be possibly something incredibly amazing. I'm not looking for proof that life after death exists. I'm looking for proof that life as it is now is far more fantastical than what they told me in school, and I know it is. That's one of the reasons I got involved in this Megalithic Odyssey film. That's the reason why. Life is more incredible, and each and every one of us can do this at home without having to get peer-reviewed documents. We can explore. We can we can do this ourselves. It is more fantastical. And that's the meaning of life. And I'm not saying there's no such thing as life after death. You see, one of the things why people are obsessed with the idea of the ghosts, that every paranormal event around them is a result of their dead uncle Ernie or something like that. That they need comfort to know that there's something after this. That they'll be with their family and relatives and pets and friends after they die. Good stuff. No problem with that. I don't have a problem with that at all. It's a hard thing to say goodbye. But I'm inclined to agree with Anthony Peake's idea that we relive our life. And I met Anthony and I've read his books, and we had a great conversation in Edinburgh at a breakfast table about 2012. It's a shame it was never recorded either by video or audio, but the two of us were coming at these kinds of interesting things from different angles, and it was an amazing conversation. But Anthony's a lovely guy and an excellent speaker, excellent, passionate man. He's very passionate about what he believes, but he tells this story that he knows the moment he died in a previous life. He was listening to the song. He was driving down the motorway in England, and in front of him was a truck that had all metal girders on it. And the song "What Becomes of the Broken Hearted" was that song "What Becomes of the Broken" for a 60s song was playing on his stereo, and it caused him for some reason to change lanes. And as he just after he changed lanes, all the metal girders fell off. I mean, forgive me, Anthony, if I'm not telling this correctly. All the metal girders fell off the back of the tow truck and that started bouncing on the road. And if he had been still in that lane, he would have been killed instantly. And Anthony Peake came to the conclusion that that was the moment he died. His daemon died in a previous existence. And this is what I think this is what I believe. Rather, there's two aspects to it. I think that's highly plausible, that we relive our lives again. The same life, exactly the same thing, but we learn experience. We experience the difference. In the same way that you would have multiple generations of a plant. Say a daffodil, right? A daffodil appears right now every spring, without fail, year after year. But the daffodil of today, if you look at the paintings of daffodils, say from the time of an artist like Albrecht Dürer, say back in the Renaissance, they looked a bit different. They looked a bit different because the new generation of daffodils, which are produced from the seed from the same plant and grow again identically, may have to make changes for environmental and other factors and so on. And that's why they will change shape and be slightly different. I believe our consciousness works the same way. We live this life and then we die, and then almost immediately, and I think that's what the light is at the end of the tunnel. The light at the end of the tunnel is, some people speculate, and some shamanic traditions speculate, that, and they tell us, that that's the vagina of the woman, your mother again, that you're coming out from. And that's where you're seeing the light coming through the vagina. And that ties in very nicely with the Shield and the Gigs, the strange statues you find all over Ireland, Scotland, and parts of England and France, but mostly in Ireland, of a woman holding her vagina open, and why they're in churches, and why they were so central to the idea. You're like the flower. You die, and then that seed grows again that you've produced in your own life, grows again in another parallel reality, or maybe a later, a different, I don't know. But you live your life again, but it won't be exactly the same, because you will have you might get killed younger, you might have different experiences, but generally it'll be the same. You'll meet the same people, the same situations, but something will happen, and you will learn processes of consciousness survival. So in the case of Anthony Peake, his consciousness had been killed in a previous version of himself, and he had learned in this one that if he got out, if something told him to get out of that lane so he wouldn't be killed in this one, and then his wife wouldn't be upset and his family wouldn't be upset. Interesting. Now, this can be, shall we say, I wouldn't say verified, but we can think of things like deja vu. Deja vu has never been properly explained. I still believe that you're getting a glimpse of, you're remembering the life you had before in that exact position. And deja vus happen a lot more when you're younger than when you're older, because you're a lot more likely to be killed when you're younger. Things like accidents, daring stuff, than you are when you're older. And that's probably why deja vus stop when you're a certain age. I haven't had one in years. For most people, when I was in my 20s, I had them all the time. In my teens, constantly. Don't have many more because I've survived. That they're probably reminding me of something you do next was what killed you in that previous life. Now, maybe something like the peace movement that grew up in the 1950s through things like the campaign for nuclear disarmament and so on, maybe they are people who were killed in World War I, or something they had somehow they were connected to somehow victims of a war. Maybe there was a war. Maybe there was a World War III, right? Maybe a World War III did happen in the 1950s, and in a different reality, and the Soviet Union and NATO went to war and millions died. Could it be that in this reality that we experience, instead of these people joining up and being killed by the Russians, the Soviets, that they became the peace movement? And that was the refinement, just like the daffodil or the flower refines itself according to a seed reincarnating, another seed growing. Now, this, I don't ask me to scientifically verify it, I can't. But at this stage in my life, this is what I've become to believe. Now, this is another important aspect, and this is if you're an atheist listening to this, or if you're someone who's riddled with guilt. If you're a psychopath, you wouldn't have any guilt, so this doesn't apply to you. But if you're a normal person riddled with guilt of something you've done, and think you're going to be punished in the next life, either through negative, dangerous karma, or you're going to go to hell, and a guy with a pitchfork's going to stick a fork in your hole. This is the important bit. You have to know what you want. And one of the reasons the psychopathic control grid is run by blacks, now remember, they're run by black sorcerers. Sauron from Middle-earth would have nothing on the majority of the ones that we have to deal with today. They're much darker. Could it be that they're encouraging atheism as a population reduction method? For example, if you think there's nothing after this, that there's no life after death, or there's no other form of existence after your mortal existence, perhaps your consciousness dissipates into the ether of the universe and you really don't experience anything because you've made that choice. You become the terminator seed of your own consciousness. Whereas a Christian may go to heaven and see Jesus and all their family members. Maybe those suicide bombers, as sick as this sounds, maybe they do get their 74 virgins and poontang in space, or in wherever they go in heaven. Be very careful of this if you're an atheist. You may be dissipating your consciousness. You can have the idea of multiple lives and still maintain your atheistic viewpoint. You don't know shit about consciousness yet to make the final decision that it doesn't exist after death. You don't know nothing about it. Nobody does. Don't roll the dice in that casino of something that's so important, especially when we have such horrific black sorcerers running the world who'll be very happy to wipe as many of us out as possible by making us, conditioning us, shall I say, to become the terminator seeds of our own consciousness. So if you believe nothing will happen after you die, goodbye. Maybe you've just opted out of reliving the adventure over again, and you're not here in the next one. So it's very powerful and almost dark when you think about it this way. But I think the one that I'm subscribing to is the idea of we live multiple existences. I know it's been around a long time from theosophy, and I don't believe in reincarnation because it makes no sense. Reincarnation is nonsense in so many ways. But there's something to it in the genetic memory. But people, you wouldn't have, the numbers wouldn't match up for start. There's not enough souls. I don't want to go into it. This, to me, of all the things I've ever looked at, makes the most sense. You just come back and do it again. With refinements, shall we say, modifications. Towards what? Who knows? We'll never know. And I'm not depending on mainstream science to tell me. I don't need them, or mainstream religion for that matter of fact. But we can get shimmering reflections of these possibilities in things like deja vus. A deja vu would be completely contradictory to a reincarnation, but it would be completely compatible with the idea that you live the same life over and over again. And as we come to the show, I seem to be living the same life here on this radio show over and over again, and so do you for listening in your thousands, and I appreciate for being here. So before I go, remember, I'd love it if you could buy a copy of Puzzling People, A Labyrinth of the Psychopath, not on Amazon though, and I want you to go to the megalithicodyssey.com website and subscribe to the newsletter and updates with a chance to win a free viewing of the pilot episode. Until then, I'll be back next week. Look after yourself and feck 'em if they can't take a joke.